Hi, everybody. Welcome to Confidently Be You. My name is Jennifer Shlomovich, and today I'm going to be talking about stress resilience with my special guest, Natalie Fayman, who is also a returning guest. We did an interview back in April about common misconceptions about weight loss. I will leave the link of that interview in the show notes below in case you would like to check that out. So Natalie is a weight loss and mental fitness coach who helps women take back control of their bodies and their lives so they can look and feel like who they have always wanted to be. Welcome back, Natalie.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be back.
It's great to have you back. So, yeah, last time we had an amazing conversation about the common misconceptions with weight loss. And you shared a lot of great resources and tools in that. And today, I wanted to have you back to talk about another topic that you're very passionate about, which is stress resilience. And stress management is a huge thing that is a big part of the work that I do, because I feel like it's runs rampant. Stress just runs into every category, whether it's weight loss, finances, health and wellness, family, divorce. Everything has some kind of stress attached to it. So I'm really excited to talk about this with you. So before we get started, what inspired you to get into the work that you do?
Specifically around stress, I'm also a veterinarian, 1991 graduate. So what does that make me? 31 years now.
Awesome.
24 years of those I spent in the ER doing emergency critical care medicine, nights, weekends, holidays. My shifts started at 15 hours and usually stretched out to more like 20, 22. I was getting anywhere from 2 to 3 hours of sleep a night. No energy or time for social life. My friends and family pretty much forgot who I was over 24 years. They pretty much gave up ever asking to invite me out for functions or gatherings because I could never go. And, just ER in general, high stress, veterinary medicine, very high stress. The whole industry is just everybody's miserable. Everybody wants out. Everybody's burned out for various reasons. And it's not just veterinarians. I mean, the whole healthcare industry is completely overworked and exhausted. Teachers, there's no subcategory of the population that I know of that isn't complaining about massive stress. And it's just so toxic and pervasive in our lives. It shortens our lifespans by 10 years or longer. It can make us more susceptible to all kinds of chronic diseases. And not to mention, it just ruins our enjoyment of our lives. I mean, when I look back on the last 30 years that I was just really buried and just nose to the grindstone in vet med, my plans for enjoying my life they kept getting pushed back to someday. Someday I'll have this once in a lifetime vacation. Someday I'll meet somebody special and I'll have a nice fulfilling life and I'll settle down and I'll do all these things. But it's always, well, now's not the right time, maybe next year, maybe the year after. And before you know it, 30 years went by and I look back and I was like, I don't even remember anything from the last 30 years. It was just eat, sleep, work. And I felt like I was in a dark hole. And all that time, the stress, everyone else's expectations, the sleep deprivation, just the lack of enjoyment of my own life. It just became such a heavy weight on me that I was starting to have panic attacks. I was starting to be depressed all the time. And I realized if I didn't do something drastic to change the course of my future, that I wasn't going to have much of a future because I don't think I was going to live very long living like that day to day. So it really did become kind of an urgent thing for me to start finding a better way. And I think originally my first experience with a life coach really kind of opened my eyes to how much of my own stress was self-generated and how much of it was really under my control, even though I felt trapped and I didn't really see any other options. And so as I went along with my coach training, it really, my horizons just opened up, and I really started to see that there are definitely choices, there's definitely concrete things that I can do today to start changing the course of my future and enhancing my enjoyment of my own life, even though my daily routine really hasn't changed all that much. It changed a little bit, but my mindset has changed completely, and it's night and day. I feel like I'm living a totally different life.
That sounds like it was an incredibly stressful period of time. I can't even imagine what that must have been like to just totally, be sucked into so much work. And yeah, the medical industry is, I've spoken to others who work in it, and it's extremely stressful, whether it's people or animals. And yeah, and so what really jumped out at me was when you were talking about, someday this and someday that. And I've talked about that before on this channel, did a video called The One Day Trap, where I lost my mom to a heart attack. And for years, I have like old letters she used to send me to college. Like email was out, but she still would send me like, snail mail letters, and I still have them. And it was just filled with, oh, next year I'm gonna do this, next year I'm gonna do that, this. And it was the same thing every year, every year, every year. And then she had a heart attack and passed away a few days later. And that was a very life-changing moment for me on a lot of things, obviously losing my mom, but then there was the stuff around that where I saw in my own life, like, oh my God, I'm doing similar things and needing to make that change. And and the first step in making that change is being aware of it, because I think sometimes we get so sucked in a loop, right? It's like we're running in that hamster wheel.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to like lose track of time and what's going on. I've had little pockets of moments in my life where, like going through divorce or other stressful things, where you kind of get sucked into all these other things, and it's like, oh my God, I need to focus on it. And you have to become aware of those thoughts, and so that awareness piece is so important. And so yeah, and coaching. So how did coaching impact you the most when you completed the training?
I think just really seeing deeply into myself to realize that I was the one that was trapping myself. I was the one that was victimizing myself. I was the one who was holding myself to impossible standards of judgment and performance that I would never expect of anyone else. But I'm a superhero. I don't need to sleep. I don't need a social life. I don't need to stop and eat like a normal human. I don't need to go to the bathroom, all these things, until I couldn't keep my car in a straight line on the road anymore. That was what it took for me to finally realize that I was going to kill myself if I didn't do something different. So, I think what probably really pushed me into coaching was seeing what was changing for me as a direct result of my first interaction with a coach, seeing how other people's lives were being changed as they were discovering how their thought processes really work to create their own reality. And yeah, it was just, even as I was going through my coach training program, I realized pretty quickly that at the end of a really long, hard day at the vet clinic, I would get home, I would be completely exhausted, demoralized, just miserable. It was like being in a dungeon and not being able to see your way out of it. It was completely exhausting, frustrating. It was just all this turmoil of negative emotions. At the end of a day of coaching, even if it was the same number of hours, I felt uplifted. I felt thrilled at the positive interactions that I'd had with people. I felt re-energized at the end of the day. It was a completely opposite experience. And I just had to ask myself, how do I want to spend the rest of my time? Because I may look back at the dark black hole that was the last 30 years of my life, that was just me trying to work myself to death, and
Mm-hmm.
start beating myself up because I wasted, this is the story I'm telling myself. I wasted 30 years of my life that I'll never get back. And those were the best years of my life. And I could tell myself all kinds of a huge victim story about that. But the only thing that's more tragic than wasting 30 years of my life is wasting the next 30 years of my life. So now I can't do anything about what happened in the past, but what's in front of me is definitely still under my control. So am I going to sit here and just keep beating myself up and keep repeating these same patterns that I already know the result that's going to happen from that because I've been living it for 30 years? Or am I going to step out of my comfort zone, take a chance, do something different, do something that inspires me and pulls me? So this is like part of the training program that I'm in right now. They talk a lot about the difference between push versus pull.
Mm-hmm.
We push ourselves out of fear, out of, I'm afraid that I'm not going to have enough money, or I'm not going to have enough respect, or I have to perform and be all these things. I have to take care of everybody. You're pushing yourself, but it comes from a place of negative emotions. It is so much different because that is so exhausting. You just feel like you're running on empty all the time. Like there's just no amount of energy and effort that you can give that's going to be enough to satisfy yourself. But when you're being pulled forward by something that really inspires you, something that you are passionate about, it's effortless. You just can't help but forge ahead, and it doesn't feel like work at all, and it doesn't burn you out. It doesn't suck all the energy out of you. It's so that's, to me, that's the difference. Like, I've spent 30 years pushing myself
Mm-hmm.
and exhausting myself because of it, and now it's time to be pulled forward. And so that really, more than anything else, I think, is what drew me to coaching, because that is absolutely how I feel. I feel inspired and pulled forward, and it re-energizes me no matter how many hours a day I spend at it.
Yeah, I can relate a lot to what you just said, just through my own experiences. And like, I've never been a vet, but just through, the way you described it, that experience. And I know a lot of other people have been through their own version of feeling that way. And we're always one choice away from having a different experience. And we have that power to make that change. And actually, I have to pause this for a second. My cat is trying to get out of the room. She was peacefully sleeping, minding her own business. And also, about 5 minutes ago, she walked over and she's trying to get out, and I don't want her to like pee. And she has to...
Okay.
All right. So I'm back now. I just had to let my cat out. She was napping and then decided she wanted to escape, and I needed to let her out. So anyway, thanks for waiting. So we were getting back. So we were talking about how we always have that choice, right? And, at first you had that story of, oh my God, I wasted 30 years of my life. But oh, wait, I have this opportunity to make the next 30 years of my life even better.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. We obviously, there's things in our lives that happen that we don't have control over, but then we have control over how to respond to circumstances. And we're always one choice away from a different experience.
Mhm.
And also, just it kind of ties back into what you were saying about, kind of like what I tell my clients is force versus flow. When you have to force yourself, it feels very draining. Where when you're in alignment with something, you're going to bring a different energy. You're going to flow into it. It's going to light you up, right? I do these videos, I record them after work at night, but I don't mind, because it's like, oh, I enjoy doing this. So
Yeah.
it's a different kind of thing. So when you're passionate about something, so it's thinking about whether is this something that falls into force, or is it in the flow category? And weaving all back into stress, stress management's an inside job.
Mhm.
It's not just bubble baths and facials and vacations, which are great things and very important. I just came back from a vacation. So and those things are important, but it's fixing it at the root, which is that inside work that you were just talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, you hit it exactly perfect. When you treat yourself to a facial or a bubble bath or a manicure or whatever it is, you're basically just providing yourself with a temporary distraction, which feels great and it may help diffuse some of that negative energy, but it's still a band-aid and it doesn't address what is causing the stress at the root level. So the thing I think is really important for people to recognize is they see the things that are happening around them as the things that are causing their stress,
Mhm.
but it's not what's happening to you that is stressful. It's your emotional and physical reaction to what's happening to you. So you can take two people stuck in the same traffic jam, and one could be freaking out over being late and getting fired and losing their job and all going bankrupt and all these terrible things. And somebody else could be like, oh well, I guess it's a good chance for me to hear the end of my audiobook, and they'll just relax. And it's the same circumstance but two different emotional reactions to it. So that's kind of how we unknowingly really create a lot of our own stress, because we have these expectations for the way other people should behave or the way things should happen. And when the world doesn't cooperate with our expectations, we get frustrated, we get angry. We tell ourselves, well, no one else is going to do as good of a job as me. So then you have to do your work and everybody else's too, or you have to
Right.
nag and triple check everybody and micromanage and be hovering. Trust me, I am a recovering control freak. And for 30 years, I told myself that, I have to perform at peak efficiency and I have to deliver top quality medicine, and nothing less than perfection is acceptable. And that's just not how the world is. And you will run yourself into the ground trying to provide that. It's just not possible. So, accepting myself as a human that makes mistakes, and that's okay. And that 80% of the things that I think need to be perfect really don't. And I don't need to pour that much energy and attention and time into those things. It's just a waste. A month from now, am I going to look back at this moment when I'm really stressed out and freaking out about, oh my God, this has to be perfect and nothing can go wrong? Am I even going to remember this a month from now? How important is it really that I get this upset about something versus just, okay, if I can widen out my tunnel vision focus on what I think I need to be doing in this moment, I may see a dozen other things that are going to inspire me with new ideas or provide new opportunities for exploration. And if you're going through life with tunnel vision and white knuckles, you just miss all that stuff.
That's very true. And coaching provides that space to unpack and have that bird's eye view of different things.
Mhm.
One of the things that changed my life in coaching was understanding the power of beliefs, understanding, what beliefs and stories are, going on behind the scenes, but also the power of values. Like values are such an important barometer in a lot in our lives to understand whether or not we're in alignment with something or not. And when I learned about values and just how important they are in making decisions and with eliminating stress, because you were talking about earlier about the shoulds and the have tos, and those are those fear-based values that a lot of those things come from our childhood in some way. No matter what kind of child you have, whether it's perfect or not perfect, we see things our parents, we think we need to do something based on something our parents raised us,
Yeah.
good or bad or whatever. If you have a parent who wants you to be a lawyer but you really want to be an artist, but you end up going to law school and spending all this money, remember deep down you really just wanted to go to art school, right?
Mhm.
That's just an example of taking on a fear-based value, those shoulds of, oh, I need to do this because of the expectations of others, or you don't want to let anybody else down.
That is 100% true. I can tell you, like my father, he's not with me anymore, but he was very like not engaged with me, barely spoke to me, and really didn't take the time. He'd never spent any time with me, didn't acknowledge anything I did. And so from a very young age, I made it my fault. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't perfect enough. I wasn't accomplishing enough things. Like I was trying to do all these amazing things so that he would just say, "Oh, wow, Natalie, you did a great job," and it just never happened. So no matter how much I did, it was never enough. And that has turned into this hyper achiever, this constant need to just work myself to death and like do all the things and not need to stop and not need to sleep or eat or rest or have time off. Like I just kept swooping in, being the superhero, saving everybody else, because I think on a like a deep subconscious level, I'm just still reliving that same behavior pattern that started in my childhood, trying to win of some sort of affection, recognition, attention, acknowledgement from somebody who was just completely disengaged, and making it all about how I just wasn't good enough. If I could just do more, do a better job, be a better daughter, be a better person, then he would decide that I was worthy of love. And not until so much later in my life did I realize that, it wasn't me. It was just him not being capable of engaging on that level.
Yeah.
That survival pattern that I created when I was a child has followed me through my whole life. And it has directly contributed to the stress and the burnout and the exhaustion and all of the damage that I've done to my mind and my body through what I've put myself through.
Yeah, absolutely. And so many of us have some kind of variation of an experience where we interpret the behavior of a parent or both parents or caregivers, whatever the situation may be. And that not good enough belief is very, very common. We all have it in some capacity. And when we're such little kids, it's amazing and crazy how the littlest things can have blow up into having such a big impact in our lives. And what you just shared, and thank you for sharing that, is is a good example of just how all of these things seed the root cause of the stress. It's like little seedlings, or it grows into the true source of stress is all those beliefs. Are what are our values, and sometimes we don't even know what our values are. Sometimes we don't know who we are because we've been around people telling us who we should be.
Yeah.
And I had overprotective parents, and that impacted me in feeling like I wasn't capable of making good decisions. And they meant well, but it had that impact on me where I felt like everyone else was better at making decisions than myself, which, led to a toxic relationship and other various scenarios that I then, when I hit rock bottom, that's when I was like, I need to do something about this. And therapy and coaching and all of those tools and resources that I've gotten from all of those modalities have at least helped me. We're never going to get rid of stress, but when a stressful thing shows up in my life, I can handle it in a less panicked way, and less stress. You can break these things down and just deal with things. And I know how to like gauge stuff in my life where, hey, if I'm going to have a crazy period of time, if I know I'm going to have a crazy couple of weeks, what can I set down? What things can I put down? It's also that time management piece and being very intentional. That's something that has been a huge theme of my 2022, is just be more intentional with my time. And when you really sit down and look where all your time goes, then you can start to become intentional about that. So we're here to talk. We've been talking about a little bit about stress resilience. So what can you share more about what stress resilience is?
So stress resilience is your ability to maintain a positive outlook, a positive mindset, no matter what it is that you're going through, no matter what's happening around you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's unrealistic to expect that you are never going to get stressed out again, no matter how much work you do on yourself. So I also define your resilience as your recovery time, how quickly you bounce back after you have gone through a stressful event or some sort of a stressful interaction. I actually I had a couple of light bulb moments recently, if I could take a minute to
Sure.
tell you about them. When I was explaining about like how my life used to be when I worked in the ER, 22 hour shifts, no sleep, no time to rest, no time to sit down and catch your breath. And one day after the next, just it would just all blur together. If I had like a really horrific, busy, stressful shift, sometimes it would take me 2 or 3 days to recover emotionally to the point where I felt like I wasn't going to have a panic attack at the idea of having to go back to work again.
Mm.
And that was pretty routine. It was happening all the time. I had about 3 weeks ago, I had a really long, stressful, I wouldn't, it was probably one of the most stressful days I'd had at work in recent memory. And I was fine by the time I got home 20 minutes later, just because of the mental focus techniques that I've been practicing for about the last 5 months. And something else that happened even more recently than that, maybe 2 weeks ago, I was having an email exchange with somebody who was asking me about my program. And I was explaining, what I do, what I offer, how I work with clients. And he kept answering me back progressively more aggressive, more offensive, more nasty, like he was starting to question my reputation as a vet, whether I had a license or not, calling me unethical, unprofessional, just
Oh,
like
wow.
ridiculous, like out of the blue, like where the heck did this come from? And who is this guy now? Not very long ago at all, an interaction like that where somebody was intentionally trying to destroy my self-esteem and my confidence, I would have allowed that to destroy me. I would have carried it around internally, repeating it to myself in my head, like every minute of every day for weeks. It probably would have taken me 3 weeks or longer to recover from an interaction like that. I I had like none of that for the first time in my life as I was reading his offensive, nasty, hurtful comments. I The first thing that came into my head was I cannot imagine what terrible things have happened to this person before in his
Mm.
life to make him this bitter and this miserable. And how sad it must be to live in that kind of an emotional cage every day for the rest of your life. And I got sad for him because of all the people that I have met who could benefit from the kind of work that I do with people to help them overcome stress and their saboteurs. He hands down needs this work worse than anyone I've ever met. And he's completely closed off to it. He will never be open to it. It will never happen for him. So, regardless of his opinion of me or whatever his expectations were, he has to live in that prison that he's constructed for himself and he doesn't see a way out of it. And so he just has to lash out at other people. That makes me sad for him. And I had absolutely no concern for myself or my feelings. And that's kind of a new experience for me. I don't think I would have reacted that way even a few months ago, because I have this huge imposter syndrome trigger that I've had ever since I was a little kid. And as soon as anyone even tickles that trigger, it triggers like a whole trauma reaction in me. And for the first time in my life, that didn't happen. And I was really kind of surprised at myself, but it just really illustrated to me how impactful this work really is and how much you can change your life without even realizing that things have changed, because it happens so slowly. I really didn't realize that my brain functioning was shifting so far away from the negative and toward the positive until something like that happened.
That's a great example. Those are both great examples of um, how things can shift. I can relate to it in that, yes, I used to repeat things too. Like if, oh my God, why didn't I do it this way? Or why did I say it that way? Or, oh my God, I made someone upset. Or, and I would just kind of go on this like broken record
Mhm.
and just repeat and just kind of shame and blame myself for a while. It'll be like this whole shame spiral.
Yeah.
And and that's also something that's healed over time. And I had a challenging text exchange with a and recently, and something that would have normally frustrated me, kind of like the same thing, was that compassion response of, okay, I know the challenges this person has and why they behave the way they do, not justifying behavior, but it helps with that perspective, right? Because
Yeah.
when you have, it's better to create constructive responses when you look at someone through first of all, you're not feeling like you're to blame or there's something
Right.
wrong with you. So when you, it's very, very empowering when you get to that place of, this is not about me, this is about this person.
Especially when they're trying to make it about you being the wrong one.
Right, exactly. And then it's where can I set boundaries with this, situation? And, I might vent to myself, for a moment. This is what I love to say to them, but
I thought about it.
but this is, how can I say what, because there's a boundary then that needs to be set. So it's how, okay, this is what I love to say, but okay, what boundary are they stepping on right now, right? All right, then I'm going to word it this way. Or, it could be boundaries, it could be values, right? We have different values, and sometimes two people can have the same values, but different definitions for those values. And then what's really going on is our values are doing battle with each other or other various things. And so when you can step out of it and take that look, it puts you in a more empowered place, because now life isn't just jerking you around. You're not like a leaf blowing around in the wind, right? You're able to, I don't know, the vision that I'm getting is like Mary Poppins with the umbrella, like you can take control, nicely glide in the wind instead of being, blown around all over the place and feeling you don't have control over the situation.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like the difference between trying to swim against the current versus just surfing the waves.
Right. Yes. Surfing is a great analogy for that. Exactly. And so, yeah. So, what you were mentioning some techniques that have really helped you. What are some
Yeah.
techniques that you could share with anyone who's watching?
Absolutely. So the thing to realize is that stress and worry and all those negative emotions, they're all about the past or the future.
Mm.
You're second guessing something that happened and you could have handled it better, or you should have said something different, or what if, and you're worried about what's going to happen tomorrow, next week, next month. And it's just your brain just starts spinning on all these negative possibilities, but it's all about the past or the future. To stop all that chatter, bringing your brain to the here and now in this moment, and not resisting that spinning and swirling of all those emotions, but training yourself to stop thinking. Because the more you think, all of these self-sabotaging tendencies come from the same part of our brain that rational logical thought processes come from. So the harder you try to think and reason and find logical solutions for whatever it is you're dealing with, the more you're actually fueling that negativity. So to stop that, you don't fight against it, you don't resist it, but you just train yourself to stop thinking. And so what you can do very effectively is to just focus on any type of sensory input, something you can see, something you can hear, something you can touch or feel. And the nice thing about this is you can literally do it anywhere. You don't have to have a quiet room with the sound of Tibetan bowls playing in the background. I have done this. I do this in the shower. I do this driving, I do this walking outside. There's any number of ways to do it, but what has become one of my favorite ones, first of all, the shower. This is what really proved to me beyond a shadow of doubt that this stuff actually works, because I realized that I would always get the most inspired creative ideas in the shower or when I'm out running or something like that. And it's
Mhm.
because your focus is fixed on a sensory some sort of a physical sensation. So when you're in the shower, you're focused on the hot water on your skin, and the suds on your skin, and the steam, and whatever it is, and you're less sunk into that overthinking, over analyzing, what if spiral. Same thing when I'm out running, like the ideas pop into my head so fast, I'm like dictating to myself in my phone as I'm running, because I'm focused on the physical exertion, how hot it is, how stiff my joints are, whatever it is. I'm not thinking about what was worrying me an hour ago or what's going to happen at work later. I'm in the moment. And
Mhm.
that's when your creativity and your inner wisdom can actually push through all that noise and chaos and finally come to the surface. So some examples. So I do all the time in the shower, just focusing on the hot water. And the benefit of this exercise is it's not to keep your mind from wandering off and getting frustrated at yourself because you can't keep your thoughts where you think they're supposed to be. It's the act of repeatedly over and over again bringing your mind back to that focus, just the hot water, not thinking about what I'm going to have for lunch later, just the hot water. I'm not thinking about what my boss is going to say to me later on. I'm thinking about the hot water. The more you bring your brain back to whatever you're focused on, it's that act of recentering yourself over and over and over again, however many times it takes, without getting frustrated at yourself, without judging yourself, thinking that you're failing, thinking that you're doing a bad job. That's what actually creates that ability to start shifting your brain from the negative, more like a survival type of focus,
Mhm.
over to the positive focus where you can actually start to experience your positive emotions. When I'm in the car, I've just started just kind of like putting two fingers on my neck and feeling my pulse on my fingers.
Mhm.
Or I'll put my fingers on the front of my throat and I'll just hum my favorite song and I'll just feel the vibrations. Whatever it is, when I'm out walking, I'll tense my hand really tight, feel that tension, and I can actually feel the shift in my emotions. And
Mhm.
then I'll relax my fingers. I'll feel the blood flow back in. My emotional state will change. I start shaking my hand out. My emotional state drops even more relaxed. So it's just any type of physical sensation, the song of the birds outside, the hum of your air conditioner, rubbing two fingers together and just feeling the sensation of your skin. So it doesn't have to be a specific, like I said, you don't have to be meditating in a quiet room. You can do it anytime, anywhere. People used to, like, I used to get so irritated every 30 seconds at work. Somebody would be interrupting me to ask me a question, ask me to help them with something. Like, I can't get my work done because people are constantly in my ear. Every time somebody interrupts me, I will turn and look at them and I will just stare at the color patterns in the iris of their eye while I'm
Mhm.
listening to them. And so I'm turning something that used to trigger me into frustration into something that triggers me to actually relax myself. And so I find that at the end of the day, I don't have to drag home this giant wheelbarrow full of tension and stress and exhaustion and frustration. I actually have energy left when I get home. I fall asleep faster. I'm way more relaxed. I'm not constantly spinning out over all the things I'm pissed off about that happened to me at work that day. um, it's like living in a completely different brain. And this is I've been doing this practice for about 5 months now. So I can't even imagine how much better things are going to get as I move on into the future. It used to be that this was something that I just had to, like, it was another chore I had to check off of a list that yep, did that, but I wasn't really invested and engaged in it. And I realized about 2 months in that I was actually starting to look forward to it, because it's like my little Zen brain vacation. This is my peace and quiet time when I don't have to be stressed out. I started looking for new ways to sneak more of it into my life. Like, now I get out of the shower, I do my whole after shower routine with my eyes closed, Q-tip my ears, put my deodorant on, towel myself off. I do all that with my eyes closed because it forces me to pay attention to the physical sensations, what my hands are doing. My brain can't wander off and start spinning out on things that just I don't need to be wasting my energy on. So the more I find ways to bring more of this into my life, I find like the more grounded, the more centered, the more relaxed I am, the more optimistic I'm becoming. And I'm recognizing those negative thoughts that used to just pass right through my head completely unrestrained. And then, lay eggs and raise their babies and take over. And now I see it coming and I'm like, nope, we're not going to think that. We're going to come over here and we're just going to focus on what we're doing. And it has made such a huge difference.
That's amazing. And it's so simple because yeah, meditation's great, but like you said, either we don't have time for it. Not everyone, some people get stressed out about doing meditation, but
Yeah,
just
am I doing it right? I keep having thoughts. I can't make myself stop.
right. Yeah, exactly. But like I've noticed, and that explains why walking is like I as sometimes if I'm stressed out, I like to go for a walk. 10-minute walk
Mhm.
is very soothing for me. It helps me start to calm down and gain control over my thoughts again and start to think in a more uh rational way and again not going through that like thoughts but right they lay eggs, they raise babies, it becomes a whole infestation of crazy thoughts that get triggered in there. And just by walking it helps me, especially if you have a heated discussion with a family member and you know sometimes just going for a walk for 15 minutes and I'm able to talk through it much more rationally than if I hadn't gone out for that walk.
Yeah.
um and so yeah, and it sounds like there's so many creative ways. It sounds like you enjoy finding creative ways of
Absolutely. Yeah, I get
making
bored
it.
if I stay with one thing for too long, so I gotta find new ways to do everything. Yeah,
That's
and I mean, you mentioned walking, and it really depends on how you approach it. If you're using that walking time to be stewing and mulling over, "Oh, I should have said this, or oh, this is what I'm going to say when I get home." I mean, that's probably not going to calm you down very much. But if you're concentrating on your breathing or your heartbeat or the feeling of your feet moving across the ground, that again, focusing on those physical sensations, you're going to be so much calmer. It really takes only about 2 minutes to start shifting how you're feeling. And the more often you do it throughout the day, it's actually more effective to do it for 2 minutes just several times during the day than to try to do like 10 or 15 minutes all at once and then not think about it again.
Yeah, because you're meeting your needs of where you're at emotionally in that moment. Like music is a big thing that helps me a lot. So like if I have to go for a de-stressing walk, I'll play a song, whether it's angry music or whatever it needs.
Yeah.
Whatever I'm feeling in that moment, whatever, because I listen to music based on my emotional mood. So
Yeah.
and
So
that
can I tweak
helps.
that for you a little bit?
What's that?
Can I tweak that for you a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah. So when a lot of people, when we listen to music, we just kind of let our brain zone out. We go back to a time of our life that song reminds me of, or whatever it is. We start daydreaming. If instead of zoning out, zone in and
Mm.
pay attention to some part of that song, whether it's the drums or the guitar or the vocal, some like one instrument, like hear it so clearly like you've never heard it before in such detail that you're really paying exquisite attention, and it's going to really magnify that relaxation effect versus just letting your mind wander while the music is playing.
That's a great tip. I'm gonna try that. Because yeah, my brain usually floats all over the
Yeah, oh, all
place.
of us.
But yeah, but at least it helps with what
Yeah.
I'm doing. But that's interesting. I will definitely try that out. Yeah, this has been a great conversation. I'm so glad you came back to share all this information and perspective on stress, which is it's a topic that impacts all of us in some shape or form. And this sounds like all these tools you've been learning sound very valuable. Some of
Absolutely.
them I'm familiar with also my coach training, but then these other tools that you've been learning sound really, really
Life
important to know.
changing.
Yeah, life changing,
Life
and they're so
changing.
simple, and
Hmm.
that's really what it is.
Yeah.
It's sometimes the littlest things make the big impact,
And
and
that's why people resist it, because it's too easy. How could that work?
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And usually we make it more harder than it needs to
Yeah.
be. And I know we talked about, habits the last time you came to visit and do an interview with me. And, it's hard at first to build those habits, and it feels strange. But like when you were talking about how you didn't like it at first, right? When you were doing it, but then you started like it because whenever we're learning something that we're building new muscles, we're
Right.
teaching ourselves a new way of doing something. And of course it feels uncomfortable because it's different than what we were doing. But if we want different results in our lives in anything, we have to take different actions because if we keep doing the same things, we're going to get the same results.
And not
And
just that, but while you're taking different actions, you have to start thinking different thoughts,
right.
because you can force yourself to do something different. But if you're still thinking the same way you thought before, it's going to be a struggle. But when you start thinking like someone who has already achieved the result that you're working for, then the actions just kind of flow naturally and they take care of themselves.
Absolutely, no, absolutely. As a business owner, when you're creating something out of nothing, for example, that can be the biggest challenge, at least for me, because you see a lot of other people, coaches, business owners, and everyone's showing the highlight reel
Yeah.
on social media. But then you're just looking at your experience and you're like, oh my God, is there something wrong with me? Or you get into this thought loop of, oh, I'm not doing it like this person, and get self-conscious. That used to hold me back a lot because there was what we were talking about is too easy. There was stepping into what was easy for me, and then, oh my God, but this isn't how other people do it. And finally, it was like, I'm just going to do what flows for me. And when you step into that flow, and it feels effortless, you enjoy it. You don't dread it. It doesn't become this burden that you just dread, and which then breeds more stress,
Right.
right? And I'm someone who having various challenges in my life, I've had a high threshold for stress. So I would tolerate and tolerate and tolerate and tolerate until I would hit like an emotional breaking point, and then I would, need like a day to kind of like just crawl into a cave for a little bit and and then get back into it. And so I'm intentional, what I was saying before about being intentional with things. And if I feel like I'm starting to get stressed, instead of tolerating it until I can't tolerate it anymore, it's okay, recognizing it. What can I do? What can I do about this situation? Where can I set something down? What do I need more of? What do I need less of? For whatever's happening, because our days can change, our weeks can change. Sometimes, there's certain things happening in our lives that can be more challenging than others. And we have that power to minimize how stressful something is for us by taking various action steps and doing these tools these techniques that can help us be in a much more grounded frame of mind.
Yeah. And also just managing our expectations for how we think things are supposed to be happening, or how we think other people are supposed to be behaving.
Right.
Because when you're feeling frustration, it's almost always because you have an expectation for someone else's behavior or for how a situation is supposed to be flowing. And it's not happening the way you think that it should. And at the end of the day, the only person you can really work on is yourself. And so you
Yeah.
can't make anyone else treat you the way you would like them to, and you just can't make the world bend to your will. And the more you try, the more you just get exhausted and frustrated. So it's a lot easier to just flow and look for opportunities along the way.
Yeah. Absolutely. Great. Well, thanks again for coming on here to share all of this. Before we go, are there any other resources that you would like to recommend to viewers?
Absolutely. So the program that I've been telling you about that has really led me to do this work and to see all these changes in my life is called Positive Intelligence. And I'm in process of going through their certification program to become a certified positive intelligence coach. So if people want to find out more about how to start putting these tools to work in their own lives, there is a free assessment they can do on positiveintelligence.com/saboteurs. It's a 10-minute assessment, which will really give you some fascinating insight as to how your mindset is creating some of the things that are stressing you out. And yeah, it was super eye-opening for me. And I have to say that when I got my results back, I was pretty shocked because by that time I had been actively like immersing myself in self-development work for many, many years. And I thought that I had come further along than that. And when I saw my results, I was like, wow, I really got a lot of work to do. But
Oh,
it's
wow.
exciting too, because it really opens the horizons, and it's exciting to me because it's a chance to keep moving forward, because I hate that feeling of stagnation. So the more, maybe I'm crazy, but I feel like the more work I have to do, the more inspired I am to do it and to keep moving forward and to keep looking for new ways to create the reality that I want. So it's a fantastic program. I am forming groups of people to take through the program as well, with me as their coach. So if anyone is interested, then they can get a hold of me. I'll give you my email address, which is Natalie@nolimitscoachingnow.com.
Great. Thank you so much. I will include the link to that positive intelligence assessment. I want to take that. I want to see where.
It's
I'm
amazing.
kind of curious now. And then also I'll include your email in the notes below. And are there any other ways that people can connect with you and get in touch with you?
Absolutely. Well, the email is probably the easiest, but you can also go to my website and there's a button you can click to send me a message. There is a stress resilience presentation that I did that kind of talks about some of this stuff. If you go to nolimitscoachingnow.com/stress, you can find it there. But that's my web address, nolimitscoachingnow.com. And you can join my Facebook group. You can watch some videos. You can read some blog articles. You can send me a message. You can just browse to your heart's content. And I would love to hear from anybody that's interested in hearing more about this work.
Great. Fantastic. I'll include all of that information in the notes below. And great. Well, thanks again, Natalie, for stopping by for this really great conversation. And thank you all who have been watching. I hope you got some value from this as well. And take care. And thanks again, Natalie.
Thank you
Bye,
so much for having me
everyone.
back. It was great.
Bye.
Bye.